Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to it. This is the Delaware Sports Debate. I'm John Buzby. He's Marty Sheehan. And Marty, we are at Championship Saturday. It's hard to believe. I still feel like I should be outside in a T-shirt and in my bathing suit. Instead, I'm layered up here, getting ready for this.
Hey, it's going to be 70 degrees at University of Delaware Stadium tomorrow.
I know. I thought it was going to be perfect, but apparently there's a chance of rain, and somebody posted a chance of lightning too. And you think the committee's praying not to have a lightning delay?
Isn't that crazy? I know, of all things to happen.
Yeah, in December, you think maybe exactly. We're going to have a blizzard, but the lightning.
We're 2 weeks before Christmas, and we're talking about a possible lightning delay at the football games. It's crazy.
Think about all the Christmas parades that are going to get canceled if that happens.
Oh my gosh, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're obviously here to talk about the Championship Saturday, the 4 championship games, and we're going to, but as we're recording, there was a DIAA meeting that was going on, started about 46 hours ago, and now just wrapping up. God love those guys who serve on that committee. Again, they do it for free, and they're volunteers, and they do it. And so hats off to them. But the meetings are usually a little bit longer than most people would prefer, including them. They're all working professionals that are taking time out of their job, and they all have the kind of jobs that you just don't walk back to and nothing piled up during the 4 or 5, 6 hours that you were there. So they're certainly not a bash on them. Hats off to the committee, but it was a long one. And 2 things came up, Marty, we're just going to comment quickly on, and we're going to dive into a little bit more on Sunday during our regular podcast, because we know listeners are here to hear our championship previews and predictions. Give us 3 minutes, folks. The first issue was about the long-term or the out-of-season coaching. And Marty, you were on the meeting. I was not. I was doing stuff for work. And, basically they've tabled this, at least for the time being, pushed it off again.
They did. They knocked it down to rules and regs, which I think meets next week. Basically, it comes down to this. Rules and regs has some things they want to do. The Public Integrity Commission has things they want to do. And the DIAA board has things they want to do. But nothing they do can happen without the consent or at least the implied consent of the other 2 bodies. So they need to hear a proposal from rules and regs, was the way they put it. And Bradley Layfield said that would probably be 2 to 3 months down the line before they'd get a proposal. There were some members who wanted to go with this now and just do something. And there were complaints again about kicking the can down the road. And for 10 minutes, I kid you not, they talked about not wanting it to look to the public like they were kicking it down the road, and then they kicked it down the road. So that was an interesting discussion. It's again, Charlie Brown's teacher makes more sense than the audio of these meetings does. So you got to kind of glean things here and there, but. Bottom line is, and Trina Leclerc, and God bless her, she comes on to the public comment session of every one of these things, which means like the fools Mike and I today on here for 6 hours listening, she was too, and waiting for this. And her idea, and I think our idea is basically the same. And I kind of said, look, get rid of this thing. Let's just see what happens. I'm not sure. And we'll get into this Sunday about where this could lead. If I don't know what the worst case scenario is, and I wish someone would explain what they think it is if they just let this happen. But anyway, a lot of debate, and again, nothing happens, and they're going to wait to get a proposal from rules and regs, and then I know the DOE board has to get involved at some point. So this is a ways away, John.
And here's my stance. It's my kid. If I want to pay his high school coach to coach him off season, that's up to me. You could say that he shouldn't be practicing that much. That's my opinion, not yours. And the parent who you tell, hey, your high school coach can only coach him 4 hours a week, that parent's going to find another coach to do it 6 hours a week, which now he's got to find another coach, which he might not trust as much. And Marty, I was thinking about this when you first brought it up on my drive here. It's no different than a teacher tutoring. And so if we're going to allow teachers to tutor, to get paid to educate outside of the school day, in the summers, on the weekends, at nights, whenever, and there are kids who can't afford tutors who are not having that opportunity. So don't give me the money opportunity either. And if you're going to make it a money thing, then give every school in the state of Delaware the exact same budget for every sport. And that will equalize it, because that's the big argument I keep hearing as well. It's not equal because John Busby's kid can afford to get extra coaching, but somebody else's kid can't.
Was a big part of it.
But you know what? The equipment that our high schools, where my son goes to high school at Appo High, I bet is not as good at some other high schools. And my kid's got great equipment, and he's got all he needs to do. He's got the basics. But you can't tell me that the budget at a public school is the same as some of the budgets for the same sport, same number of kids at a private school.
And that was a big disparity. There was a discussion about the level of access of equipment, or the type of equipment, quality of equipment.
It already is.
So yeah, you're hitting that right on the head.
Yeah. So anyway, again, enough of that. People know my opinion. I think they know your opinion. We're going to talk more about it on Sunday because there's going to be a lot of comments. If you got a comment, let us know at DE Sports Debate on Twitter or Facebook. Join the conversation because this is going to be an issue. The only issue that's going to be bigger, Marty, is if the governor says, hey, you don't need to wear masks anymore, and the DIAA still makes athletes wear the mask. That's the only thing that could be a bigger issue than this coaching thing right now. And I don't think the DIAA is going to do that.
No, actually, real quick, DPH was on this call and said, as far as they know, there's nothing in the works. So the mask will still be worn by everybody, basketball, volleyball, whatever, through February. And then, of course, it came up about the Omicron variant and all that stuff. So who knows what's going to happen next.
All right. So that's the one issue. We thought obligated to talk about that because it just happened and you'd wonder why we didn't bring it up. But again, more on that on Sunday. The other thing is that they voted for the boys and girls basketball tournaments to be set back to 24. Back meaning last year they were both open. Now they're 24. Marty, you told me this was despite the girls committee wanting it to be an open tournament. Of the two tournaments you would open up, it would be the boys tournament because the girls tournament, as it has been, and we talked about this last year, I can already tell you guaranteed 4 out of the 10 teams that are going to make it to the final 10, or let's say out of the final 8 to the Bob Carpenter Center. I can already give you 4 of them that's going to happen to. Those first round games are going to be nothing but blowouts like they were.
It's become like the college football playoff. At the beginning of the season, you can pick 7 to 8 girls teams, more likely than not, and say 4 of those will be in the semifinals.
Right.
And to add all of these teams, and then of course the boys tournament, they wanted to go back to 24. So then the whole equity thing came up and people, well, girls get mistreated otherwise and in different sports. And so, but finally somebody said, look, we cannot do this 2 different ways. So they put it to a vote. And they voted to expand the girls tournament, first of all, to keep it as an open tournament. It failed 6-6. Then they went and I believe it passed 9-2. They had one person leave. So both boys and girls tournaments will go to a 24-game tournament. The minimum game requirement because of COVID and whatnot is 15.
Sometimes it can be fair, but it doesn't have to be equal. And I think this is a perfect example where you could open the boys tournament up, close the girls to 24 only. It would be fair because the team numbers 25 and the rest of the way are not getting to the championship game.
No, and this would lead into your idea for splitting up the divisions, which is a conversation they need to have in the off season.
All right, so enough of that. Let's talk about Championship Saturday. Again, we'll talk more about that on our Sunday podcast. All right, let's start. The Unified Sports game is going to be at 1:30. And again, Unified Sports is a collaboration between the DIAA, Special Olympics Delaware. It's been around since 2013 when it started with track and field. They then added basketball, and then they added flag football, or flag football might have been first and basketball. I forget which way it was. But either way, Dover and Smyrna are going to face off. Dover got there by beating Newark Charter. Smyrna got there by beating Cesar Rodney in the semifinal games. Dover has won the last 2 state championships, and Smyrna won their title in 2018. So really, you do have the 2 of the last 3 state championships squaring off, and that'll be at Delaware Stadium. It starts at 1:30. Right after the Division II game that's going to take place. All right, we're going to start with, and I said Division II, Class 2. We're going to start with Class 1A, as we've been doing throughout this whole football playoff season. Number 1, Laurel, is going to face number 2, St. Elizabeth. This is the last game of the night. The football committee basically already admitted it's not going to start at the scheduled 6 o'clock time. There's a lot's got to go perfect for it to get to that point. But hats off to Jim Commongees on the phone call Monday that I was on, where all the teams that are involved in this Saturday's championship were on. And he basically said, look, it's not going to start at 6 o'clock, but the only way to get 4 games in here was to have it scheduled at 6 o'clock so we can start as soon to that as possible. You know, the last thing you want to do is schedule the last game at 8 o'clock and everybody's sitting around twiddling their thumbs at 7 o'clock. So again, hats off to the committee for making this happen for the players themselves. Laurel, they beat Odessa 49-0 in the quarterfinals, 33-0 win over Indian River in the semis. So haven't really had a competitive game in quite some time, a few weeks at least. 4 different players rushed for touchdowns in that Indian River game. So it was a well-rounded effort. Their losses came to Class 2 Woodbridge and Delmar in the regular season. That's their 2 losses in their 10-2 record. The Woodbridge games was a 6-0 loss. Not bad when you're playing a class up. Same with Delmar, 24-21. And so their only close win was a few weeks ago against Indian River, that 14-13 game that ended on the missed extra point. Their biggest plus is Kyle Weaver, I think. And the reason I think that, he's the defensive player of the year. He's the linebacker. And the biggest key for Laurel to beat St. Elizabeth is to be able to stop Quasim Benson. And it's going to start with Kyler Weaver.
Yeah, I agree. Both of these teams, I'm so excited about all three of these matchups. I mean, on
Yeah.
paper, these things all look amazing. We're getting the top two teams from each division, or each class, and that's phenomenal. Yeah, Laurel this season has just been dominant. And I read there's an interesting article in the Beta Bay News today by Andy Walter about Laurel, and in it, Joey Jones basically, he doesn't come out and say it, but he kind of implies that he thought they were going to be put at the 2A level, and he felt at that time that they were going to be very competitive at that level. So he said, when they announced us at 1A, we set our sights squarely on the championship game.
Yep.
So he knew he had the talent to get to this level. So, they've got a great defense. They've got a really proficient offense. To me, this is going to come down to Caden Shockley and Javier White. Javier White's their do everything running back. Caden Shockley's the quarterback. I think both of these teams run the ball. We know that, and with Kasim Benson and with Javier White, I think there may be a passing element to this that comes into play because both of them are going to be squarely focused on stopping the other team's running back. So I agree. The Laurel defense is formidable, to say the least. It's going to be the best defense Kasim Benson has seen all year, and so I think Laurel. I think it's going to come down to what Caden Shockley. I think he's my key to the game for Laurel in this one.
All right, St. Elizabeth 19-0 win over Charter of Wilmington, 33-0 win over Tatnall to get there. That happened on long scoring drives, 4 touchdowns by Kasim Benson. One thing St. Elizabeth has proven is that they are a much better team with Benson than they are without him. Their only loss was a 35-0 to the Class 2 Caravel. That was without Benson. Not saying that they're going to win necessarily with him, but they got blown out without him. They had 2 close wins, 14-7 against Indian River. And if you want to call 19-0 close against Charter Wilmington, that was in the quarterfinals. The 14-7 win over Indian River was in week 5. I think their biggest plus is Kasim Benson, offensive player of the year for Class 1. Also, I think Mike Lemon gives them not an advantage. I'm not saying he's a better coach than Laurel's coach, but he certainly knows his players. He knows the system. He's been around as a player and as a coach. And so I think, he's a plus for the team is what I'm trying to say.
This is funny. I didn't know this. Mike Lemon was a former Wesley quarterback.
I knew that. Yeah, I did know that.
I know that till yesterday. It's interesting. Something about St. E's I didn't know. I can't believe it.
Yeah. I hope nobody's here. Nobody's listening.
That's right. Yeah. St. Elizabeth's had a phenomenal season. The concerning thing to me was the last few games, the 19-0 over Charter, and Benson played some of that, but he was hurt. But then last week, 13-0 at halftime against Tatnall. I mean, the Tatnall defense put up a heck of a fight in that first half. Yes, St. Elizabeth ran away with it. I think that was more to staffing than anything else. St. Elizabeth has a pretty large roster. Tatnall's very limited. Mm-hmm. I think this is going to come down again to, I don't think it's going to be Kasim Benson who's the key to this game. I mean, clearly, if he gets going, St. Elizabeth could have a great afternoon. They're going to be so focused on stopping him. I'm looking at Chris Character, the guy who had, I think, 4 touchdowns against Tatnall the first time they played in a game that Kasim Benson did not play. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. They will use Benson as a decoy and go to him, a kind of an off-tackle type thing, a misdirection. And Brett Smick is the quarterback. And I think those two guys may play a bigger role in this. As I said, I think Javier White and Kasim Benson are the reason people are buying the tickets. I think it may come down to some of these other guys that are a little bit in the shadows, especially Chris Character, who's had a great season, but is not going to compete with Benson in the numbers. I mean, Benson was the offensive player of the year for Class 1. But so I think the quarterbacks in this one are going to play a bigger role than maybe some people expect because both of these lines are phenomenal at stopping the running game.
You're looking for common opponents. Both these teams edged Indian River High School. They were close games, and they both blew out Polytech. The last appearance for Laurel in a state championship game was in 2014 when they lost to Hodson. Their last win was way back in 1991 when they beat Indian River High School. For St. Elizabeth, their last appearance was in 2010 when they beat Archmere. And so you'd say it's a revenge game possibility, but these kids have no clue who was playing on those teams way back then. So, Marty, who do you think in this game? Who are you picking?
Oh, first of all, just a real quick stat that I found interesting. Laurel has lost the state championship game 4 times.
Wow.
All 4 times they've been shut out. Huh. So just kind of one of those things. Yeah. It's kind of an odd stat. But I went back and forth on this one, but I'm a Viking. I got to stick with my guys here. I think,
yeah,
and I do
why'd
think it's
even
going to be
ask?
close. Yeah, I know. I'm going to go St. Elizabeth's 20-19, and I'm going to say there's a couple extra points blocked. Both of these teams do a good job of getting in on special teams, so I'm going to go St. A and a squeaker 20-19.
They're going to win, and I think that they're going to win like in that 28-21 category. That
Nice.
is going who I'm going
to. I hope we're both right and we get a whale of a game, because I think both these teams deserve it.
Yeah, I do too. All right, now I'm ready for the Class 2. I had already flipped my sheet since I had made my final comments, and that, of course, is Archmere against Woodbridge. Archmere gets there by way of a 41-0 win over St. Mark's in the quarterfinals, a 2016 win over DMA, but they trailed 10-0 in the half. So you talk about battle tested. They scored in that game through the air, on the ground, a safety and a field goal. Their close wins were against Wilmington Friends, St. Mark's, Tower Hill, all legitimate teams. So they are battle tested. Their biggest plus is easy. It's Chris Albero. He does it all. He does everything but coach, and he probably does a little bit of that too. And we just don't know it, Marty. Archmere's in good shape coming in.
They are. And it's funny because their biggest weapon to me is also their biggest concern, because Albero is such a huge chunk of that offense. We saw what DMA did when they got to him. They put some pressure on him early in the semifinals. He threw an interception. He fumbled. And that's a completely uncharacteristic for him. And the one thing we know about Woodbridge is they're going to bring the D.
Yeah.
So I do think it's going to be, I think this is going to be a battle of line play more than anything else. Both teams have good running games. Again, with Archmere, it's mainly Albero. It's Kenny Newton with Woodbridge, but Archmere is in good shape, but I think they're going to have to throw the ball maybe more than they want to. And this is also important to note. I tweeted this last week during the semifinals. Throughout most of the game, when Archmere would switch from offense to defense, 7 kids, including Albero, would stay on the field. That is a lot to go both ways. And they do not have a huge roster, Archmere. So I do think I tell you, this worried me last night when I heard it, was the 70-degree temperatures. These kids have been playing in mild temperatures for the last 6 weeks or so.
Yep.
It may be hot in all that equipment tomorrow. So I think that could be a factor, but Archmere certainly they're capable of winning this game. They've got an incredible lineup. I do think on defense, Lucarelli, Morta, and De Gregorio are going to be the guys that are going to have to be big to stop Kenny Newton.
All right, and they're going to face another very battle-tested team, perhaps the most battle-tested team of any of the playoff teams, not only left, but that started, and that was Woodbridge. They've won 2 of the last 4 state championships. They really had an easy time in the playoffs compared to the regular season, 31-0 win over Tower Hill in the quarters. Wilmington Friends, it was a 24-14 game, but it was 24-0 heading into the fourth quarter. So it was a late comeback, if you want to call it that, but that game was never in doubt. Woodbridge's close wins, only one was not a close win, and that was Red Lion. So again, as I said, they are battle tested. Their biggest pluses, they've got Wyatt Wright, who's the defensive player of the year, and they've got Kenny Newton, who is a wingback, a first-team all-state team in that class. And they've got Coach Marvin Dooley. He's been here before, Marty. He won the 2014 state championship with William Penn. And so he knows what it takes to get here. He knows what it takes once they get here. And he's going to know what that day is like. That game was played back in 2014, was also at Delaware Stadium. I think both these teams have a huge advantage in that they're the only teams of the 8 teams that are coming on Saturday who know exactly when they're going to kick off. They know they're going to kick off at 11 o'clock. It's the first game, so it's not going to be delayed by any reason unless there's a lightning storm in the morning would be the only thing. They're going to get to do their entire warm-ups on the Delaware Stadium field. The other teams are not. They were told that you're doing the majority of your warm-ups on the practice fields right next door, and they're turf fields too, but it's still not the same as being in the stadium where you're going to be. So I think there's a lot of advantages for playing that 11 o'clock game. One of the disadvantages for Woodbridge especially is they've got about an hour and a half bus ride, school bus ride. That's about an hour and a half, maybe an hour, 20 minutes at the least. And so that's about the only negative. Other than that, I think both these coaches would tell you if they had to pick which game they wanted, 11 o'clock's not a bad pick because the weather's going to be warmed up by then. They're going to know exactly when they're playing, and they're going to get to warm up the entire time. In other words, the routine's going to be normal. For the rest of these teams, just because of the way the timing's going to work, it's not going to be normal because you're not going to know exactly when you're 45 minutes away from kickoff until you get to 45 minutes away from kickoff. And so
we hit two of my keys early, and that was Marvin Dooley, the experience of having been here. He can prepare these kids. He can tell them what this day will be like minute to minute. And again, the fact that they are the only set in stone time. You can plan this from the time they wake up in the morning, have their breakfast, get on the bus.
Yep.
And we know Marvin's going to have that down to a science. I mean, that's the way he coaches. The other thing too is, Kenny Newton he's been phenomenal for this team. Archmere is going to be loaded up to stop him, much as the way they did eventually in the second half with Devin Green and BJ Aline last week, although they got off to a slow start. I actually think Seth Smart, the quarterback, is going to play a big role in this one. And I see these teams focusing on the guys who've been the big guns all season. Lexton Westcott, the wide receiver for Woodbridge, has been phenomenal. Only 12 catches in the regular season, but it was for 300 yards, so 25 yards a pop. He can get open. He's got great speed. Now, they have thrown more interceptions than touchdowns had Woodbridge. So if Archmere could be an advantage if they force them into too many throwing situations. But if Woodbridge is the one dictating those throwing situations, in other words, off a play action or, a first down where they decide to take a shot, I think Seth Smart and Lexton Westcott could hook things up. I think Kenny Newton's going to have a usual day. I think he's going to gain 100, 120 hard-earned yards, just as I think Albero would do for Archmere. But I really do think it's going to be the line play and protecting Seth Smart so you can get the ball out to Westcott that may prove to be the difference in this game.
All right. If you're looking at common opponents, both beat Howard by more than 2 touchdowns. Both beat St. Mark's by less than a touchdown or less. They both played Tower Hill. Archmere beat Tower Hill 26-15. Woodbridge beat them 31-0. So if you're a common opponent guy, those are those stats. Archmere lost in the finals to Howard last year. They last won in 1982, Marty. I was just starting out high school back then, and that was against Seaford. Woodbridge lost in 2019 also to Howard. They won in 2018 against Wilmington Friends, and they also beat Wilmington Friends in 2016. So Woodbridge much more recently battle-tested in state championship games, but the reality of it is, Marty, most of the kids that are going to be on the field for Woodbridge this year probably did not play a significant role back in 2019 when they played against Howard. Your pick on this game?
I'm going to go. I think Woodbridge is going to take this one. I think it will be a nip and tuck game through a half. I actually, this is my biggest spread. I actually think Woodbridge is going to win this one about 27-13. I don't see the Archmere offense getting behind the DMA defense the Woodbridge defense like they did against DMA. And part of it is, reading Marvin's his quotes last week about the adjustments he made to the passing game. Archmere beats people with the pass because they set it up so well and they lure the cornerbacks and the safeties in, and they're able to get behind the defense. I don't think Marvin is going to allow that to happen. He knows he's got a stout defensive front. He knows if they can get pressure on Albero's not going to be able to get out to the sides. They got to keep him in a contained situation and force him to throw the ball. And I think in the second half, the combination of the staffing issues for Archmere, which of course people don't know what I mean by that. They just have a small roster, right. Smaller roster than Woodbridge. And I think that Woodbridge is going to take advantage of some lapses and maybe some kids that are a little tired in that second half. One thing Archmere impressed me with more than anything last week was their resilience, because about midway through the third quarter, those kids had hands on hips. They were exhausted and they continued to fight. I don't think DMA had enough to take full advantage of that. I think Woodbridge does, and I think they will.
I'm in a similar boat. I think of the 3 games, if I had to tell you which one was going to have the biggest spread in points, it would be this one. I can see Woodbridge getting off to the similar starts they've had when it's kind of been, as I described it, I think a couple of weeks ago, it was kind of just a ho-hum, we're here and here we go, and we're going to score and not let the other team score, and we're going to score again and not let the other team score and keep that going. If you're going to ask me for a score, I'm going to say 28, and that's because they are well known for. Actually, I'm going to say 3 touchdowns, but I'm also going to say 3 2-point conversions because Woodbridge is very effective of that. So I'm going to say 24-6, and the 6 points will be 2 field goals by Mr. Albero, and who will step up and easily kick them.
He's
but
a
it's
weapon.
just not going to be enough. He is a weapon, and he's had a heck of a year. But I do just think that Woodbridge, I agree with all the points you made. They've got more players, and they're going to be able to grind it out like they do. And I do think it's a huge advantage for them that they're playing at 11 o'clock, because their minds are going to be set from the moment they get out of bed as to when we're playing, how long the bus ride is, when we need to eat breakfast. The other teams are not going to have that advantage. But the other games, both teams are going to be in the same boat. And but I think when you have a long bus ride, I think it really helps to understand exactly what your timeline is. And Woodbridge it's going to be an advantage for, it's going to be good that Woodbridge has it. I don't say that gives them advantage over Archmere, who's got a 20 to 25 minute bus ride, but it's better than the other situation. And so Woodbridge is not going to have that to worry about, like maybe say the Laurel team will, that doesn't know how far after 6 o'clock they're going to be playing and how they're going to time everything.
And you know what? I will say this too. I think Archmere against DMA had to employ their linebackers a lot to stop the running game. When I watch some of Woodbridge games, their defensive line does a lot of that run stopping for them, which frees up the linebackers, which I think is really going to play a big part. I wouldn't say they'd go so far as to spy Albero, though. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you can afford a player, because once he gets out on the edge, he can really get going. But I do think they're going to be able to keep him in a contained situation, and that's going to be the difference in the game.
Alrighty, let's move to the big boys, as I call them, Class 3A. That game kicks off at 3:30 right after the unified game, which is at 1:30. It's number 1 and number 2, like all these games are for the different classes, Class 1, 2, and 3, different ranking system for the unified, so it doesn't really come into play. But you have number 1 Smyrna. They come in at 10-2 against number 2 Middletown. They come in at 9-1. Let's start it with Smyrna. They got here by destroying William Penn 46-6, and then they beat Dover 46-21. But that game was not as close as it sounds. It was 24-21, or it was not as. That game is closer than it sounds, is what I should say. It was 24-21 in the middle of the third quarter. I never felt like Smyrna was going to lose to Dover, but it was a competitive game up at that point. Smyrna's losses were to nationally ranked Bergen Catholic, and then, of course, to Middletown. But again, the Middletown game was tied up 14-14 heading into the fourth quarter. Their only close win was against St. George's. So you want to call them battle tested. Of course, you have 2 losses, you're battle tested, but they did have a close win also for that. You know, their biggest plus is they have a dual threat on offense. They've got Cameron Edge through the air. They've got Wayne Knight on the ground, and they got a lot of other weapons too. Those are just 2 of them.
It is, yeah. And Wayne Knight is just as proficient through the air. He's, I think, second or third on the team in receiving yards as well. So and just a side note, amazingly to me, he has avoided winning any Offensive Player of the Year awards. He did not get the district award. He did not get the class award. They both went to Cam Edge. So it's kind of interesting, because of Cam Edge's 2,800 passing yards, I would guess a lot of those, and I mean a lot of those, are of the run and yards after catch variety, if you watch the Smyrna offense. So I think Wayne Knight has been phenomenal. He's going to Stony Brook next year. Getting back to Cam Edge, he came here for 2 reasons: to play with his friends, because he's already a renowned quarterback. He's got a lot of offers, but he also came here to win a championship.
Yep.
And I think they have spent the entire season kind of building from that Middletown game. I think I said this last week. They just didn't look like they were in sync. They were still putting up some big scores, but it was taking them a while to get going, and it just seemed to be out of sync for a while there. That just everything wasn't in lockstep. It is now offensively. When they needed it last week, boy, they just unleashed the hounds on Dover when Dover got close, and that was all she wrote. And of course, they did it to William Penn in the quarterfinal round. So I think they are loaded. Their defense is playing phenomenally well right now. They gave up a couple fluky plays last week. That will not happen again, I don't think. So I think they're perfectly positioned right where they want to be.
All right, Middletown, 27-0 over Appoquinimink. That game was 0-0 at the half and was set up to be the upset of certainly the most recent state championship games that have gone on, but they did pull that out 27-0. And then against Sally's, it was only 12-7 at the half. They ended up winning that one 33-15. So they're much more battle tested in the playoffs than Smyrna is, I would think, if you want to look at it that way. Their losses are to St. Joe's Prep. Their only close win was against Smyrna, 28-14. Again, that was closer than that score even says. You know, their biggest plus is their defense, Marty. If that defense is not as good as it is, they might have not gotten past Appo, and they may be home already wondering what channel they're going to watch this on. And so, that's really, they got the lineman of the year, Cody Harris. the defense is going to have to come up big again, because you just don't know what this offense is going to be able to do against Smyrna, because they struggled against their last two opponents, Appo and Sally's.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to hit on that immediately, was the struggle of the offense in the two playoff games. Yeah, and you're right. If that defense isn't there, they may not win that first game. They certainly don't win that second game, because Sally's had all the momentum going, but that defense just would not allow them to break free. And I think Middletown had, 4 first half turnovers in that game against Salesianum. If I'm wrong, I believe.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Yep.
Okay,
yeah,
I watched every
that's
play.
Concerning. That is concerning. I think as much as Smyrna has continued to gel, it just now feels like something is off in this Middletown offense, and they're not in lockstep all of a sudden. And I think it's going to be a very close game through halftime. I think it's going to be a very close game throughout, I should say. I think Cam Edge and this offense are so in sync, and Mike Judy has this defense just frothing at the mouth to get to Braden Davis in this rematch. I think I think Smyrna wins this one. I think it's going to be a great contest, but I think in the end, I think Smyrna is going to pull ahead. I think that I'm going with a 30-24 score for this one.
Well, Smyrna's won 3 straight championships back in 2015 and 17. Haven't been back to the title game since. Those last 2 championships in 16 and 17 were against Middletown and over Middletown. Middletown has been to 10 of the last 12 state championship games, but they have not won since 2012, when they won the second of 2 state championships. That was back in the Chris Godwin era. And so, Marty, the lack of offense for Middletown concerns me, because the defense is not going to hold Smyrna to 0 points like they did against Appo, and Smyrna is not going to be shut out in the first half or held to 1 touchdown like they were against Sally's. And so Middletown's going to be in a shootout, whether they want to be or not, I think, because as good as their defense is, they're not going to shut Smyrna down. And so they've got to be ready and willing and able to score, I would say 21 plus points. And that's where I'm going to limit Middletown and say that's going to be their scores, 21. And I'm going to give Smyrna 35. I think it could be a 35 to 21 point game, because I think Smyrna has that much offensive power. They've got a lot of guys other than Cameron Edge and Wayne Knight who can score and who are good. And again, Middletown's lack of offense toward the end of the season concerns me when you're playing against Smyrna. Now, you put anybody else on the other side of the ball, I'd say, yep, there's a good chance Middletown's going to hold that team to 10 points. So all they got to do is score 2 touchdowns and they're going to win a state championship. I just don't see that happening.
And by the way, Smyrna, just to run down these for folks: Cam Edge, Wayne Knight, Ymir Knight, Devin DeMoe, who's up around 650 yards.
That's 4 household names.
Yes.
You don't even have to be a big high school fan, and you know those. If you give me 10 names and they're 4 of them, I'm telling you they're the 4 that play for Smyrna.
That's right. And then to add to that, the defense, where Nathan Lesniak has had a phenomenal season, Brandon West has had a phenomenal season. They just seem to be firing on all cylinders. And I think it was funny. One of the Knight brothers had a quote, and it was sort of like, we woke up and bang, all of a sudden we went 3 years without being in the state championship game.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're here. We're actually here. And I think they're going to take full advantage of it. I just think they have a few too many horses for Middletown. And I think the key, the gel on offense and just the ferocity with which that defense is playing right now.
And that's a great opening speech for Mike Judy. Guys, we won 3 in a row, thought we'd be here the rest of our lives, and we haven't been back since. And Zach Blum, same thing. Guys, I was part of he was an assistant coach back in 2012. He said, I thought we'd be back here time and time again. And they have been. They just haven't won.
Exactly.
So don't blow this chance, guys. This might be your one chance to win. And so, all right. So it's going to be an exciting Saturday. I'll be tweeting from the press box for certainly the first 3 games. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick around for the Class 1 game. That's going to be a great game. I'm going to come home and watch it if I don't stay. Yep. And I'm looking forward to that Laurel St.
I'm awaiting I'm awaiting a babysitting assignment from my daughter to find out if I will be in the box with you on Saturday.
Or you'll be I'll be tweeting from home,
and that's
one
right.
or the other.
That's right.
And so anyway, so it's going to be a fun Saturday. Go out if you can. Don't forget there's health checks you got to do, and you're not going to show up and pay cash. You got to buy the ticket online. If you're vaccinated, you're going to have to show that. And so, it's a simple thing, but it's not going to be simple if you're standing in line and there's 50 people behind you yelling at you that you didn't take care of whatever you were supposed to take care of beforehand.
And the board stressed to everyone, get out to your communities that you have to have this stuff or you will not get in.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You're not going to be, oh, here's $5, let me in.
Yep.
That's not
Yep.
going to happen. And so, folks, don't let that deter you from coming, because I can tell you, having been there with 20,000 fans on a football Saturday on Parents Weekend at UD, they've got a system. It works, but you have to be prepared when you get up there that it's your turn. Here's my vaccination card. Here's my health check. Here's my ticket. Thank you very much. And if you don't have to be vaccinated, but you have to have a test, and it can't be an at-home test. So start figuring that out now, of how you're going to have that test so you're ready to go. These could be 4 incredible games. Could be the best championship Saturday. It's the first time there've ever been more than 3 games and 3 tackle football games as well on top of that. So we're going to be back on Sunday. We'll drop our podcast by noon, where we'll wrap that up. We'll also get further into the coaching out of season. Especially, we want to hear your comments about it and talk about it. What do you guys feel about coaching out of season? And the same with the boys and the girls tournament that is going to be back to 24 instead of open. A lot of mixed reviews on that. So we'll talk about that as well. But it's been fun. We hope to hear from you online at DE Sports Debate on Twitter and Facebook during the games. If you're watching the games on the NFHS network, talk to us and we'll talk back. We look forward to it. Until then, he's Marty Sheehan. I'm John Buzby.